Welcome to The Glitter Effect, a podcast dedicated to shining a light on the movers, shakers, change makers, and all-round living legends of our communities who are making a real difference. Today's episode of The Glitter Effect is one that touches the heart in the deepest way. I'm joined by an incredible father and advocate, Wayne Holdsworth, the founder of Smack Talk, a powerful initiative born from the unimaginable loss of his beloved son, Mac, who tragically took his own life at just 17 after falling victim to sextortion. In the midst of grief, Wayne has found a way to honour Mac's memory by creating something that's sparking crucial conversations about online safety, connection and courage. Through Smack Talk and campaigns like Unplug24, Wayne's helping to ensure that no family ever has to experience what his has endured and reminding us all the importance of truly being present with one another. Wayne's story is one of heartbreak, hope and humanity, and I feel incredibly honoured to have him here today to share this journey and the glitter that still shines through his advocacy, his honesty and his love for his son, Mac. Wayne Holdsworth, welcome to The Glitter Effect.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kate, for having me on today. The work that you've been doing, the people you've had on your show have been incredible, and I feel pretty privileged to be here today. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I'm very privileged that you've taken time out of your busy days to give us time and share your, I think, an extraordinarily important message and story because it affects everybody. So for those who may not be aware of Mac's story and what you've done, first of all, can you share a little bit about who Mac was, what made him special, what kind of son and a friend he was, and then tell us Mac's story?
Yeah, Mac was always, up until the last year of his life, a leader. He was school captain. He was captain of the local footy team. He was really an honest boy. He had a really wicked sense of humour, and that was demonstrated at the dinner table regularly. And he loved sport. He loved playing footy. He loved watching the cricket, and his favourite was playing basketball, but also watching the NBA. He really loved that.
Yep.
He was the life of the party. He used to get a lot of his mates around, and if there was a party somewhere, he'd be in and amongst it, enjoying themselves. But he's very loyal, and he was one of the most generous people that I've ever had the pleasure to meet. If he asked me for $20, I'd put $20 in his account, and the next day I'd see $30 back in my account.
Oh,
he was the most generous boy I've ever, or anyone that I've ever met, and that was him. He was sexually extorted online when he was 16, and he changed dramatically. He was online for about 30 minutes, and in about 8 minutes he met who he thought was a 18-year-old woman, and she had told him all these sorts of things that made him feel pretty good about himself, that, he was a super sports person. He was a really intelligent guy and would be a great person to go out with. And she, in that very short space of time, sent Mac a nude picture with her face, and he reciprocated very quickly thereafter. Yeah. And as soon as he did that, the communication ceased, and then the phone rang, and it was a number he didn't recognise. He thought it was his new love interest, and so he picked it up pretty excitedly, thinking that it might have been the 18-year-old woman. On the other end of the line turned out to be a 47-year-old man from Liverpool, New South Wales, called Min Tri Do. I can mention his name. He's been charged, and it's public record. And he said to Mac at 16, this 47-year-old man, that he has his nude picture. He has hacked into his account. Here are some of the addresses, and one of which was mine. And if you don't pay me $500, I'll distribute that picture. Mac panicked. He had to go to footy training the next night, and he felt embarrassed and ashamed if that picture got out. So he paid him $500, thinking that was the deal. Yeah. That'd be it. There'd be no more action. But a few minutes after that, the phone rang again. It was the same guy. And I've got the transcript from the AFP, the Australian Federal Police, that says that along the lines of, I'll have your $500, I want another $500. And if you don't pay me $500 into the same bank account within a few minutes, I will send that picture out. And if I send the picture out, your parents will hate you and you'll want to kill yourself. Well, he got half of that right. And so at that point, Mac hung up on him and he came in to see me, and he told me about what had happened. And I just put my arms around him and told him that he was the victim. He'd done nothing wrong. But I felt the moisture on my shoulder, that he was crying, because he's a really resilient boy. I hadn't seen him cry for a while. And he was crying. And the phone rang whilst we were hugging. And it was him again, this Min Tridu. And I picked it up. And Mac said, "Dad, can you deal with this? Can you talk to him?" Yeah. And I tried to, but he wasn't reasonable. It was an animated discussion, I must say.
I'm sure.
And it ended up with him saying to me, "I hope your son dies and I hope you die." And so we finished there. I asked Mac's permission to go and report it to the police with him, which he did. He said, "Yeah." And we did. And the police officer said at the end of the statement taking that Mac had done a really good job. He'd given him everything, all the pictures and everything. And he said that he'd done a good job, but we're probably not going to find this guy. He'll be working for a cartel somewhere, and there'll be an encrypted bank account detail that he's used, and we won't be able to find him, but thanks for reporting it. Turned out that they did find him. He used his own bank account details instead of the bank account he was given by the cartel. And so they were able to trace that, and they found him. Mac was never the same after that. He became introverted and withdrawn. He didn't want to go to footy training, didn't even want to play. He was a different boy, totally. And, to give you an example, Kate, of the sort of things that he used to do and he stopped doing, for Father's Day or my birthday, he used to always make a greeting card by an A4 piece of paper that he'd fold over. And on the front of it, he'd draw something. And normally it'd be him and I kicking the footy together in the street, or him bowling and me missing it and the stumps flying, or shooting hoops. But then inside the card would be, "Dear Dad," and the words that he would use about his love for me were just extraordinary. And then he'd finish up by saying, "I love you, Dad." And in September 2023, about 6 weeks before he took his life, it was Father's Day, and he bought me a check shirt, had a rip in it, got it from Vinnie's. And I said to him later, "It's a good shirt, Mac. Is there a card?" Because I love those cards. And he said, "Dad, I'm sorry, I can't make those cards anymore." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because, Dad, I can't trust that the words in those cards won't be shared with others." He lost total faith and trust in me, let alone anybody else, because of that terrorist on the line that extorted him. Mac was asked to give a victim impact statement because the case came to Liverpool Court in January 2024. Mac didn't last the distance, and the person, Min Tridu, pleaded guilty. He did a deal with the prosecution, the defence and the magistrate, and he was able to plead guilty to a lesser offence, the proceeds of crime receiving, and he received 6 months jail. And he got out. Kate, to just categorise this terrorist, he used his 16-year-old niece as the bait for the boys he tried to extort. So they're the sorts of people that are out there. Mac was never the same. It was really difficult for him. And then on the 23rd of October, 2023, I got home about 6:30 p.m. at night with Daisy, our 14-year-old daughter, Daisy, Mac's sister, and she just finished a game of basketball. My wife had cooked a really nice meal for us, and Mac had got home about 4:15, and he was pretty hungry. We sat at the table. I would always sit at the end, Maggie, my wife, at the other end, and Mac would always sit on my right and Daisy on my left. And Daisy told me a few weeks later that Mac was kicking her under the table, mocking my really bad dad jokes. It was a really fun night.
Yeah.
But he'd already decided what he was going to do, and he was happy. He even said to Daisy, it was her birthday on the 30th of October, "Hey, Daisy, it's your birthday coming up. I can't wait to take you out to Chadstone Shopping Centre and buy something special for your birthday." And Daisy was really happy with that. He even said before he went to bed that the last thing he said to me that night was, "Hey, Dad, can I drive my car to work in the morning?" And he'd just become sort of an apprentice carpenter. And my oldest son, Josh, gifted him a second-hand car for Christmas. It was a real bomb, but he loved it. He'd done over 250 hours in the car and with me. And so he said to me, "Hey, Dad, can I drive my car to work in the morning?" And I said, "Yeah, mate, that'd be great." And the last words he said to me were, "I can't wait to drive my car and to work in the morning. Good night." We all went to bed eventually, and the next morning, my wife was working in the city. We're living in Mornington on the peninsula in Victoria, and she got up early. She left about 6 a.m. And about 6:30 a.m., I was sitting at the edge of the kitchen table, reading the news on my phone and with a cup of tea. And I just felt the time was getting on a bit, that Max should have been up by now. And I looked at my watch and you see that? Yeah, that's Mac's watch. I always wear that now. And it was about 5 to 7 in the morning, so I thought better wake him up. So I knocked on the door, no answer. I opened the door and he'd taken his life. And,
Wayne.
Kate, just the shock to start with, but then the sense of failure as a dad, and I still have that, just racked my body. And even the sense of not only failure, but the sense of helplessness. I couldn't do anything, And Kate, I've done some hard things in my life, and I reckon I'll probably do some hard things in the future, but I'll never ever do anything as hard as what I had to do that morning, and that was to leave Mac in a pool of my tears there, but to have to go out to his 14-year-old sister Daisy, who just got up for school, and to say, "Daisy, your brother's passed away." We hugged and we cried, and we still do. It was really hard. We'd already called the 000, and they arrived, the paramedics and the police, about the same time. And they rushed in, and they were really good. They rushed in with the defibs and their equipment, but then slowly, after only a few minutes, slowly sauntered out. And the head policeman, the policeman in charge, I do a lot of work at the police academy now.
Yeah.
He grabbed me in a bear hug, and that's breaking protocol because they've got firearms. They're not supposed to be that close. But he just gave me a bear hug, and he whispered in my ear with my Daisy here. He said, "I'm sorry, mate, he's gone." And it was at that point that I realised that we'd lost our son, our 17-year-old son. We found a note on his computer that he'd written fairly much over the past 4 weeks. He planned this really well. And he planned that he knew that my wife was going into the city in that morning, and he just wanted me to manage it because he knew I would and look after Days.
Yeah.
So that's what happened to him, Kate. And, our lives have never been the same, but more importantly, I can't imagine how he's going through life leading up to that, but then that night deciding to do what he'd done. It just really, the pain must have been enormous.
It goes to show, doesn't it, that you really, your story, you did everything that you could and you should as a parent, and he was open. And, it's, as you say, it's every parent's worst nightmare, having to navigate something like that. How on earth do you then not deal with it? That's not the right word, but how do you digest what's going on, grieve as a parent, help others on their grieving process, and then look at creating this incredible initiative, Smack Talk, that you've created in Mac's honour? Really, talk me through that, because I mean, gosh, I can't. I've heard the story, but not directly from you. And this is any parent, any human will be touched by this story.
Yeah.
It's not something
Hey,
you want anyone to go through.
mm, yeah, no, and that's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
A couple of days after Mac passed away, I was obviously in touch with the coroner and everything and all that. I actually offered to give Max all his organs and donate them,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, because he'd been he wasn't frozen quick enough, he couldn't. But they obviously detected something with me because I received a call from a guy called Adrian Price from Support After Suicide,
Yeah.
and Adrian came over home and we sat for an hour, and I spoke to him for an hour every day for weeks, and then every week for an hour, and I still speak to him now. And he saved my life, Kate, because
Yeah.
I wanted to join ACT.
Yeah.
I unashamedly say that because we need to talk about facts, not
Absolutely.
hide them underneath the carpet.
Yeah.
And Adrian saved my life and still keeps me on the straight and narrow. Um, and um, I guess what I've seen, Kate, is sort of two or three different styles of people after they've lost their son or daughter, like we did.
Yeah.
And I've met probably over 100 parents, and typically they fall into two categories. One is that they want to take their life, and they do.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if I had and how Daisy would be? So
Mm.
imagine those families that either mum or dad do that. And the second category is that many of the mums and dads, they turn to drugs and alcohol to numb the pain, you know.
Yeah.
And, I don't drink alcohol and haven't had drugs, but um, they're the two categories. And I just didn't want to be that, And Adrian said to me, and he's a strategist, he talks about keeping people on the planet for as long as he can. He said, have you ever thought about leaving a legacy for Mac? And that was about 2 or 3 months after Mac passed away. And so I didn't, but I thought I should. And so I
Mm.
started reading and researching, went to the federal health minister, state health minister, got as much info as I could on suicide and particularly youth suicide.
Yeah.
And I came away with some startling and extraordinary for the wrong reason facts. And so
Mm.
I thought I'd just put together a presentation and present to a few basketball clubs, and that's my line of work these days.
Yeah.
And I did. And then word of mouth got around. And as of yesterday, I presented to a group yesterday. I presented to over 27,000 people now in
That's
the last year.
incredible. Yeah.
Over 208 presentations. But the important thing, Kate, is that we've saved 9 lives directly. Um, and one
Amazing.
of them I want to share with you that's really close to me was that I presented at a school one day, year 10s, and there's about 300 in the audience. And at the end, typically a lot of the kids, the boys come up, because they know I'm in sport and everything, and they come up and say good day and thank me. But
Mm.
this day they did that, but there was a girl just on my right. She was 15, and she waited and waited, and then she came over, and I could see she was crying, and the welfare director was facing the other direction, and she couldn't say anything, but she gave me a note, and I opened the note, and it was her plan to take her life that night.
Oh, good
It was a
grief.
PTV journey planner, and where she was going to take her life. And so, because I was educated, I was able to help get her to the school. Her parents came over. I then exited and the professionals took over. But Kate, this Father's Day just gone, September 25, she sent me a text message and it said, hey, Wayno, I'm still alive.
Oh, Wayne.
So, so education is the key, and
Yeah.
you asked me how I can do this. Well, I, I don't know, other than I'm a Christian. And the legacy that I want to leave for Matt, because he was 17, he didn't leave a legacy, is that when St. Peter knocks on my door and says, righto, Wayne, your turn to join me, I'll meet Mac again and I'll look him in the eye and tell him that his life was worth living
Yeah.
because he saved hundreds of lives. And that'll be my legacy, um,
Mm.
and his legacy combined.
How beautiful. That's and look, and I think, it's something I spoke to you offline. I've got three boys, and and I think, we're in a time now where, suicide and that sort of stuff is now being spoken more of, but
Yeah,
obviously it's not enough still. We're making small steps in the right direction. So something like this, and I think people need to really hear those stories, those hard-hitting stories, and you need to hear more. So for what you're doing is incredible. But do you think it's helped your grieving process? Or do you think it's masked it over time as well, or a bit of both? Because there's no timeline on grief and there's no definition of how you grieve. What Talk me through
yeah.
that.
I've found Kate being really busy is important for me.
Yeah,
I found over Christmas time last year where we had a couple of weeks off work. My wife went to New Zealand. That's where she's from.
yeah,
It was difficult, and I had to find something to do really quickly. So
yeah,
keeping busy, and between my full time work, I work about 60 hours a week, and doing the Smack Talk presentations, and also working with the government on raising the age limit to 16 and their
mm,
safety commissioner. It keeps me really busy, and actually talking about it is a part of my grief process. It really is, Kate. It
yeah,
helps me enormously. And even though it's bloody hard, it's hard, really, really
mm,
hard. And even talking to you today, and I've got the highest respect for you, and I feel really comfortable here, but I still get emotional about it.
mm,
But that helps me in many respects, and
mm,
to talk about it. And I guess there's the lesson right there, and you alluded to it, that suicide takes 2.5 times the number of people here in Australia than the road toll.
yeah,
Today we lose 12 Australians every day on average.
mm,
They're the ones that take their life every day. If we lost 12 people in the middle of Melbourne or the middle of Sydney, it'd be the front page, back page, middle page of every newspaper in
yeah,
Australia for weeks.
yeah,
But suicide, we don't talk about it. Um, the very first time someone wrote an article was a guy called Paul Amy, who writes for Code Sports. He rang me, he's a mate of mine. He said, I'd like to do a little story on Little Mac. I
mm-hmm,
said, great. And we did. It appeared on page 67 of the Herald Sun that
mm,
Saturday. And I thought, that's great.
great,
And we don't talk about how Mac did it. That's not, support after suicide, suicide prevention Australia, talk about what's appropriate to talk about and
yeah,
what's not. And that was early, that was February 2024. By September 2024, suicide prevention was on the front page of every News Corp publication across Australia. And
mm,
people are now talking about it. And
yeah,
so, even sadly, when the two Selwood boys recently took their lives, the
yeah,
brothers, I was talking to Jerry Waitley recently about it. Their parents had the courage to say that those boys took their own life,
yeah,
and not the normal where they say, oh, there was no suspicious circumstances. These are the lines to
yeah,
call, lifeline being one of them. They had the courage, to do that. We need to talk about it. Therefore, once we talk about it, we talk about how to mitigate it. And then
mm,
once we start to mitigate it, looking for the signs, open questions, not closed questions like just, are you okay? I ask Mac that every day, and he'd
yeah,
always say, I'm fine, Dad. What's the cricket score?
yeah.
And then having good listening skills, and then knowing what to do if someone says, I don't want to be here anymore.
Mm. And as you touched on with the news, it's only in sort of the last few years that they've actually started using the term suicide or taken their lives in the day-to-day news. So it's now something that people are hearing, as opposed to when I grew up, it was almost inferred in the
Yeah,
news, if or not at all, in fact, and really sort of brushed under the carpet. And so I suppose it sort of creates that shame around it, so no one feels comfortable. So again, the more we
yeah,
have these conversations with adults who then can talk to their children and at school, it's not a word to be ashamed of. It's
no,
there's always a way to help you. There's always people. That's not the answer. And I think
correct.
that's really what we need to drum in and keep talking about. Now, you created the Smack Talk. You do presentations around the country, as you said, which is amazing. Do you have a team as well, or is it just you? Or
Yeah, I do all the presentations. I've done every one of them, over 200 presentations. I think it's important for me to do them.
yeah,
I will eventually train others that have experienced similar to what I have. Maybe it's a brother of a person that's taken their life, or maybe it's a sister or mum or dad, and we need more of them.
yeah,
But so far, it's me. And, the presentation for 45 minutes, as I said, I talk about the day that Mac took his life, not how he did it, but, the aftermath and the pain and the grief and the sadness and the shock, all those things. And being a dad, trying to navigate through that. There's no book written about how to navigate that as a leader of the family, so to speak. But the important thing is, that's the story, and that captivates people. I'm sorry to say that does, but that's okay. I'll cop that any time, because then I get the opportunity to educate them around mitigating the risk for their children falling susceptible to what Mac did, but then also to relieve the pressure on mum and dad that they don't have to go through what we did. So I do talk about things, as I mentioned before, Kate, around identifying the signs, changes in people, anniversaries, then identifying in people that they're teary all of a sudden, that they're not looking you in the eye, they're shaking, they're changing their habits. Mac used to ride his bike everywhere. If he wasn't driving that car, 3 days after he passed away, I saw his bike in the backyard and I grabbed it, take it into the garage. Both tyres were flat and it had cobwebs around the gear mechanism. He hadn't ridden that bike for ages. That's a sign.
Yeah.
And so, and then asking open-ended questions, how was your weekend? Tell me about. Not, are you okay? I've spoken to Kate at Are You Okay ages ago, and hopefully that'll change one day. And then after you've identified signs in someone, asking questions, then listening skills. We have to start to listen to understand, not listen to resolve or respond. I thought I was a good listener, bad listener. I was a bad listener. I was always listening to respond or resolve. We have to be in the moment, in their moment, phones away, locked off, and then focus in on being in their moment and start to ask questions about what they're talking about. So is that you're really understanding what they're talking about before you go into resolution mode. And then simply knowing what to do if someone then does say, I don't want to be here anymore. And, I have an example, even at our stadium, where I noticed something about one of the really high-profile basketballers who plays in the NBL. I noticed something wasn't right, and I asked him how his mental fitness was out of 10, and he told me it was 2. He told me the reasons, and he said he didn't want to be there anymore. And so I brought him in to my office. I asked permission to ring 13, 11, 14 Lifeline after he'd said he had suicidal thoughts and had a plan. And we rang that line together. We got help that afternoon. I took him there. He stayed with me for a couple of days, and then he was okay, and he still is okay now. But if I hadn't asked him how his mental fitness was, he'd be dead now. So we have to proactively treat mental fitness like physical fitness in many ways. We've got to change the dynamic. News Corp have been unbelievable through the Let Them Be Kids campaign and supporting me. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Supporting me, and said they now use in their newspapers mental fitness, not mental health, because let's normalise it. And so it's just Victoria philosophy.
That's okay. Life goes on.
And so, And so it's really important to treat it normally, just like it's a physical fitness. And so we see people that are limping. We see people with arms in a sling. We see people that have cancer. They lose their hair if they're having chemo. We know what's going on because we can see it. With mental fitness, we can't. So we have to look for the signs in people. We have to ask lots of questions. And then we've got to know what to do, because right at the moment here in Australia and the world, our mental fitness structure is flawed. We have to wait here in Australia between 4 and 6 weeks to go and see somebody. Headspace, for example, have got a waiting list of average 5 weeks. That's too much. And so we got to, as a community, know the signs so that we can help each other before it gets to the stage of people doing what they're doing 12 times a day, every day in Australia.
And that's extraordinarily valid points. I did mental health first aid recently, and I was heavily involved in my local junior football club. So we did it because obviously, we wanted to be aware of what's going on with these young ones. And what the takeaway from myself and the people that I did it with, we were really surprised that you do actually ask someone outright whether they're feeling suicidal. And
Yeah,
that's not actually going to put the idea in their head,
no,
and then work back from that. So I think, again, that's just because you just, that whole, it's ingrained in you not to use that word or that term. But I think, again, the more we keep talking about it and the more people, understand it, then, like you say, we can start seeing more signs, or at least know.
yeah,
And I think it's getting there. I think it is. I think younger kids are, in their own way, are getting it. They're understanding it. I think we're sort of that sandwich generation that is still learning.
yeah.
Um,
And you watch, Kate, you watch when, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it in a minute around social media, how beneficial that will be.
Yes, well, that leads me to my next question. Your initiative that you rolled out, Unplug 24, which I absolutely love and I've taken part in over the last couple of years. Explain for anyone that doesn't know what that is. Tell us what that is, how that came about.
Yep. Thanks, Kate. About 3 weeks before Mac's first anniversary, we were walking our dog, our sausage dog, Shandy, and we were talking about what we're going to do to commemorate Mac's first anniversary,
Yeah,
him not being with us for a year. And we spoke about maybe a basketball tournament, because I'm in basketball, or maybe a fun run or something.
yeah,
I decided no, we needed to do something that was a little bit more important, and something to do with his life. And so, because he was sexually extorted, and so I thought that I would ask every Australian I could get to in that 3 or 4 week period before October the 24th, 2024, to abstain from social media and
mm,
to register on my website to see how many we could get. And I thought, oh, I might get 2 or 3,000 people register, but we ended up getting over 130,000 people register.
mm,
There were premiers in Victoria, South Australia, New South Wales. There was footy people. There were cricketers, Adam Gilchrist, Jessica Malboy, a whole range of people joined
yeah,
in and were
brilliant.
ambassadors, which was great.
Mm,
And the purpose is to um, show to yourself that you're in control of social media. You can abstain for 24 hours. You can
yeah,
do it, that you're not addicted, that you can give it up for 24 hours. Because I can tell you, Kate, the meetings that I've had with the tech giants, they think they're in control of us with
mm,
the social media. And when you look at people and you know that on average, adults spend 4 hours a day on average outside of their work commitments on social media,
mm,
it's little wonder that kids spend 3 hours a day on average on social media after school in their bedrooms alone.
yeah,
And we
yeah,
know that 99% of sexual extortion cases occurs to kids that have either their bedroom or bathroom door shut.
yeah.
And so we wanted to implement this Unplug 24 to get people to abstain, but also to show the tech giants that, hey, there's a bit of a group out here that
Mm,
can get off your platforms. And then we thought that was reasonably successful. So this year we did it again on October the 24th. It was a Friday,
yeah,
2025. And we had a little bit more of a lead up time, and we
mm,
did a bit more promotion. And we know that 829,000 people registered, and we
that's
know of many more
incredible.
that just abstained and didn't register,
Yeah.
which is absolutely outstanding. And that's within Australia and overseas, because I've had Japanese TV, um, Canada, US, UK, Germany, Berlin, all come over home in the last year or so asking, hey, how did this raising the age limit to 16 for social media occur? Because they're
Mm,
thinking about implementing it in their countries. So they all agreed to put it on their front pages as well. So, yeah, we got a lot of
amazing.
interest from overseas.
That's so good. And I can attest that it was something that I actually made a pledge to myself that I am going to do that once a month and start to
Oh,
do it once
done.
a month. Yeah,
Excellent.
because I felt, I'm in, it's just habit, isn't it? It
Yeah,
becomes habitual and you can't break it. And so I said I made a pledge to myself. That's what I'll be doing once a month.
yeah,
And I felt amazing. 24
yeah,
hours of not being on it, I felt amazing and connected. Even
yeah,
though I'm extraordinarily connected, I felt
yeah,
even more
yeah,
so. So I highly recommend anyone to do it. But it leads me into my next question. You've already touched on it as well. With Australia, the world is watching Australia, I think, on the 10th of December. For those who aren't aware, there's new legislation that's being released that there will be social media bans for kids under the age of 16. And they've listed a whole suite of social media apps which will be banned. How that's happening and what's happening is still sort of unraveling. But without getting political, what are your thoughts on this? And do you think this is the step in the right direction?
Yeah, it's definitely a step in the right direction, Kate. We know that overseas cartels are targeting boys and girls as young as 8 in Australia with extortion and scams.
Mm,
We know that there's boys addicted to violent pornography at the age of 5.
yep,
We know that girls as young as 7 have anorexia because they're body shamed online.
yep,
So you can't tell me that preventing them access to the social media that's destroying their lives is a bad thing.
mm,
And in my opinion, it will save lives. And if this legislation had been in place, even though Mac was 16 when he was extorted, he would have had the education leading up to that to know not to send a nude pic to anybody anytime.
yep,
He would be alive today. If I
mm,
knew what I knew, if I knew what I know now, then he would be alive
yeah,
today. So this legislation, the first in the world, is going to be replicated across the world and other parts of the world. They've already said they're going to do that.
mm,
They're watching Australia to see, and it's not going to be perfect. There are going to
no,
be ways. Look, we already know that in 30% of cases of kids that are under 13, they're signed in by their mum and dad. So
mm,
there's still going to be those people that think it's their child's right to have access to that stuff.
yep,
So they'll get in. But you go into the school playrooms for playgrounds, for an example, the footy ovals, all that. And I was at a school today, a local school today, and they're not allowed their phones anymore, for an
no,
example. And they're out there kicking the footy, mucking around, playing around. And the principal told me that there's been less bullying since, there's been better academic results, and more kids playing sport. That's
mm,
because they've not allowed them their phones, therefore social media. So if we extend that and restrict it until you're 16, it will be really hard for the kids that have got it because they've
yeah,
got it and we're taking it back. But
yeah,
this is a generational change to a degree. So the kids that are now, 8, 9, and 10 that don't have social media, hopefully,
mm,
they will grow up knowing that they can't get it till they're 16 anyway. But
yeah,
then the important thing, Kate, is that they'll be educated to know that when they are 16, to be very wary
yeah,
and also make sure that they behave themselves on social media.
mm,
Um, there will be errors. Meta and Google, they nod their heads saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. We know that their only motivation is driven by the shareholders' return. So
mm,
it's not in their interest to have people off social media. So they'll work around something, but at the end of the day, it's a law, and the parents can say, I'm sorry, darling, I can't allow you to sign on because
mm,
it's a law. You can't grab my keys at 13 or 14 and drive out the car and pick up a few mates and grab some drinks. You can't do that.
exactly.
You
Yep,
can't have social media. Difficult thing because they've already got it and you take it back. That's the hard
yeah,
bit. But let's look at the long picture. And, you know, it, I know, Kate, this will save at least one life. And if it saves one life, then in
mm,
my opinion, and not everyone agrees with me, but if that saves one life, then all this money, all the effort that we've put in is worth it.
absolutely. And I read an article just recently, and it was a parent or a parenting specialist, and she was saying she's sort of saying changing it slightly when educating her children, saying it's trying not to use the negative connotation of ban, but to say it's not you can't have it, it's just not now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right, Kate. We've referred to it as a restriction.
Yeah.
So you're restricted until you're 16. It's
Mm,
not a ban because a
mm,
ban is a ban. If you're banned from playing football, you can't play it again.
correct. That's right.
Whereas, yeah, a suspension of 4 weeks, 6 weeks is different. This is a restriction.
Yeah. And look, and I think, as I spoke to you offline, I think, I've spoken with my 15 and 14-year-old, my 11-year-old, thank goodness isn't on social media. But it's interesting to navigate this. And I feel, my husband and I are doing what we can to talk about it and to try and prepare them. But I feel that so many parents, when I talk to them, are firstly not overly aware of what it means, and
Yeah.
B, aren't really talking to their children. And then you go, gosh, this is
Mm.
another thing that's going to then become a problem, because all these kids whose lifelines are going through social media, and that's how they stay connected, rightly or wrongly, all of a sudden could just disappear overnight, and how are they going to navigate that? So, I don't know how much, I don't know whether it's being communicated well enough to the right people. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
We the last time we were in Canberra, which was probably about 8 weeks ago, I suppose, we met with the Prime Minister, but also met with uh, Annika Wells, who's the Federal Communications Minister, and we expressed our desire to know what the communication plan was.
Yeah.
When were they going to do advertisements? When was it going to go to school? Because December 10th is when, not long after, most kids break up for school for 6 weeks or eight
That's
weeks.
right.
So
Yep.
there's going to be more people sort of relying on that social media aspect. So we wanted to know, and they assured us that everything was in place and planned and everything. And the strategy, as I understand it, is not to flood the market um, for 6 weeks out.
Mm.
It's in the 2 weeks leading up, because it's fresh in people's minds and they remember it's
Yep.
flooding the market. So ads are starting to come through now. You might have seen on television. They'll
Yeah.
increase dramatically. A lot of other stuff, probably through social media, will be distributed. And stuff has now started to go out to schools. I was liaising with the E-Safety Commissioner in the last 24 hours or so, and I understand through information that was provided to me that a fair bit's going out to schools now,
Mm.
because most of the years, seven, eights, nines, and tens, not so much 11s, but tens, they finish, they've still got a couple more weeks left.
Mm.
So, or thereabouts. So they've still got a window. But then the parents are the ones, because they're going to have to deal with it.
Mm.
But Simon Welsh, who is a clinical psychologist in South Australia, very, very highly regarded for his research. He's done a whole lot of research on this, and he suggests that the first 2 weeks will be difficult, but after that, they'll be as good as gold. And
Okay.
this will be the new normal, just
Yep.
like, losing our son, the new normal.
Yep.
This will be like that. It'll be the new normal. The new normal will be, as opposed to liaising through TikTok and Instagram, etc., will be on the phone or visiting
Mm.
face to face.
How
Um,
nice. How
Yeah,
nice is that? Which
yeah,
we did have a little bit, I suppose, we had a snippet of that locally, more localized during, dare I say it, during COVID lockdowns,
yeah, yeah,
where people were back to, I'm showing my age, back to the old school way of catching up. I mean,
yeah,
we always joke and said you'd know if anyone was up for a play date by the number of bikes that were outside their
yeah,
house.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
was how
yeah.
you knew where everyone was.
Mm, mm,
And part of me just would like to see some elements of that come back. And I think it will, because kids will need to do something. They
yeah.
can't sit idle. And but like you say, that change, nobody likes change. But
Mm,
it's navigating it and talking about it. So
yeah,
I think it's really important. And the work you're doing is crucial to ensure, that change, and that parents jump on board too, because there are a lot of parents, like you say, I think the majority are, and as with everything, you've always got
yeah,
some that won't, and that's fine. That's what makes
yeah.
the world turn.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And there's it's going to be difficult for the parents, difficult for the children, but just hang on to the fact that after a couple of weeks they'll get used to the new normal,
Mm.
and the patterns that they'll be displaying will be that they'll be going outside more. You know, Going to the beach in the summer is going to be terrific. Going to meeting their friends down at the beach. You know, I want people to open their back and front doors to allow their kids out and to
Mm.
enjoy that, the sunshine, and because there's a whole lot more terrorists online than there are outside their door.
Yeah.
So the risks are pretty small. So let them enjoy life.
Gosh, let that sink in, Wayne, what you just said then. I think that's a really important takeaway, what you just said then about the terrorists online compared to outside. That if any parent listening takes anything away, that's what you take away. The
Yeah,
safety of your
yeah,
child is you're much safer outside in the open air than you are
yeah.
online. That's
Yes, indeed.
incredible. Now,
Absolutely. Yeah.
as with all purpose-led organizations, funding is always a tricky thing. How do you get funding, or do you get funding, or is it purely fundraising that you get that you support all of this work that you're
Well,
doing?
Kate, the way that I have operated is that I do not charge 1 cent for any of the presentations that I do. I know organisations do and they live by that. That's fine. But I don't want money to be a barrier for people to hear what we've got to say. So
Yep.
I have not charged a cent. There's been some beautiful organisations out there that have donated some money, which is great. That pays, and even for flights interstate, and I do presentations in South Australia, West Australia, Queensland, whenever I can do them. I paid for all of that, accommodation and flights and everything, and so that helps that. And there's been the Bendigo Bank have been really supportive as well, and they've provided some financial support.
Yep.
And both the federal government and the opposition, when they were leading up to the election this year in May, both promised support financially to Smack Talk if they got in. So obviously the Labor Party got in, and that will be coming into effect next year,
Great.
which will help enormously. So and that then gives rise to the fact that I don't have to charge anybody any time, and that takes that barrier away.
Yeah.
More people hear about it. I've never had to advertise. It's all been through word of mouth, and that's why we want to keep it. So,
Yeah.
and I know some organisations really struggle to get funding. I know that. So, I'm lucky. I know that. I'm really lucky. But you know what? The harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah. Very true. And what does the future look like for Smack Talk now? What have you got in the pipeline?
Yeah, well, I'll continue to do what we're doing now in terms of, people contact me through the website, www.smacktalk.com.au. They contact me through there, book in a session, or get back to them in 24 hours and book in a session. I've started to get a number of bookings for next year already.
Yep.
But I want it to be national. So I want us to be prevalent in every other state, maybe South Australia to start with, and have someone in South Australia under the Smack Talk banner talking about their story, and then all the mitigating facts and how then to make a difference in others' lives. And so I want it to become a national organisation. But the principle is, I never want the principle to change, and that is that there's no charge for that, but that our sole purpose, our only purpose, is to ensure that kids don't go through what our kids have gone through and take their lives for whatever reason, and that parents like me and the others out there that have experienced a death of their son or daughter through suicide don't have to go through what we do. That's our philosophy, that we've got to mitigate that risk.
That's very important. Well done. You're incredible. I honestly think you're incredible with what you're doing and what you stand for. I take my hat off to you and everybody that's behind you, because you are leading the charge with this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's coming in the next chapter. I always ask my guests, because it's the glitter effect, and I firmly believe everybody has a pot of glitter. They just need to find their purpose and spread it with heart. And you've more than done that. But to get to this point, there are people who have influenced you or inspired you. Who have been your glitter kings and queens along your journey from, over your life, or just this chapter, that have inspired you to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think mum and dad were always really hard workers. I grew up in a family of 16 kids for about 6 years.
Good grief. Okay.
Yeah, there's my brother and my sister, and then we had 13 wards of the state under our roof.
Wow.
And it was an incredible, inspiring, 6 years of my life, when I was probably about 10 through to 16, something like that. It was inspiring because they had nothing, and we all played cricket together. We all played footy together, and we walked to school together, walked to church together. It was beautiful, and you really learned some values. So my mum and dad were inspirational, and they're both not with us now. Their tombstone is only about 15 metres from Mac, and that they've inspired me. In recent times, the people that have inspired me are people that have had a similar situation occur to them. Matt Cronin, for an example, from the Cronin Foundation. We're talking offline about him. He's an inspiration and has given me some really good tips and tricks. My inspiration at home is my wife and daughter, Days. I mean, they've just been unbelievably supportive of what I've been doing. But the biggest inspiration is Mac. He is the one that gets me out of bed every day. He's the one that sits on my shoulder when I start crying in presentations, telling me that you can do it, Dad.
Yeah.
And he's my inspiration now. And the other one I just want to mention, I don't want to be political because I'm not. I'm very apolitical. There's a guy in South Australia that if it wasn't for him, this legislation raising the age limit to 16 would not have occurred, and that's Peter Malinauskas, the Premier. I got to know Pete and met him a few times, and we've had some really good conversations with he and his wife, and they've got 3 little kids that go to St Ignatius in Adelaide, and I've presented there numerous times. And he said to me after I presented at the Social Media Summit in mid-last year that he held in South Australia, he sat next to me after I presented and he put his arm on my leg and he said, mate, he said, I will make sure that this legislation gets up to restrict people that are under 16 for social media, and I'm going to talk to Albo tonight. And he did. So he's an inspiration.
That's great. That's so good. So many inspiring people. Now, if Matt could see what you've built in his honour, what do you think he'd say?
He would say, good on you, Dad.
Yeah, beautiful.
I'm proud of you.
That's so good. That's beautiful. And now you did mention it during the talk, but if our chat, but if people want to find out more about Smack Talk and the incredible things that you're doing in Mac's honour, where do they go? How do they find you, Wayne?
Yeah, the website is the best one. Take the background of the website really briefly is that one weekend I put together a website, and I'm not a website developer, and I presented the presentation a week after, and the feedback, this woman came up to me who I knew and said, hey, Wayne, who put your website together? And I said, oh, I did. And she said, can I give you some feedback about your website? I said, yes, please, thinking that she'd say something nice.
Yeah.
And she said, Wayne, your website is shit. So I said, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. But she said, I've got 2 friends of mine that are website developers, and they ended up getting in touch with me through, I think it was Scott Pape, the Barefoot Investor,
Yep.
and they developed a website, which was terrific, and it's a really good website, proactive and really good, cutting edge, and not like the one I put together. So on there, just www.smacktalk.com.au. Smack Talk is banter on the footy field, basketball court, etc. And the MAC in Smack Talk is in reference to my boy. Get on there, book a session. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. It could be late, 2 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't matter. I'll get back to you and organise a time for me to come out. Small groups, big groups, anywhere in Australia, I'll come out.
Amazing. Wayne, thank you so much for giving me your time today. Thank you for your courage, your heart, and your willingness to share Mac's and your family's story with such honesty and purpose. Your work through Smack Talk is saving lives and opening eyes, and there is so much more to come. You're encouraging us all to pause, unplug, reconnect with what really matters. And if today's episode has raised any difficult feelings for you, please reach out, talk to someone you trust, or contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. You are never alone. Wayne, thank you for reminding us that even through deep loss, there can be love, purpose and light, and that glitter can shine even the darkest of moments. I wish you, your family and Smack Talk all the very best with what's to come. I will be keeping very close tabs on what you're doing, and look forward to catching up with you again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Kate. You're a superstar. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me, Kate Ganneil, on The Glitter Effect. If you've loved this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep showing up, making an impact, and sprinkling that glitter wherever you go. Bye for now.